Desperate to be a famous and recognized influencer, a young American, named Kurt, manages to develop a macabre plan that makes him viral on social networks. At the beginning of the film, we see how Kurt tries to stand out in the networks by uploading videos to his YouTube channel called KurtWorld96, but it is not very popular and his videos only get a few views. 10 years go by in which the young man uploads content to the networks, but as he fails to succeed he gets frustrated and thinks about giving it all up. That's when he comes up with a revolutionary idea, which he calls the lesson with which he is sure he can go viral. To implement his idea, Kurt starts working on an Uber-like ride-hailing app called Spree. Then, the young man places several cameras inside his car and starts broadcasting Live the Lesson, in which he assures his viewers that he has the key to success. Before starting his workday, Kurt tells his followers that it is important to offer water to his customers, but he mentions that it is a special water. Before leaving, the boy goes into the house to help his mother, and then gets in the car to start his day. On his first trip the young man meets Frederick, who is a slightly older gentleman headed to an important meeting. The guy notices the 6 cameras inside the car, but Kurt tells him that it's a show for his channel, and tells him not to worry. After a while, the gentleman starts making several racist comments and Kurt can't let that come out on his broadcast, so he decides to start with the lesson by offering some water to Frederick. The guy takes the water and drinks it, and before long you can see how he starts coughing himself unconscious, lying on the back seat. It is here that we learn that Kurt introduced a deadly poison into the bottles, sealing them with a glue gun so that the passengers wouldn't notice. The boy disposes of the body and goes in search of his next ride. Meanwhile, we can see how his few followers comment that it's all a sham and that he's just doing it for attention. Then, Kurt arrives at the location of his next passenger and she gets in the car. After a while, the woman takes one of the bottles and drinks, so she dies too, to which the guy uses facial recognition to unlock his phone and rate himself well on the app. His third passenger is a guy named Mario, who treats Kurt badly and talks rudely to him. While driving, another person named Jesse joins the ride and Mario gets angry because it will waste his time, even though he had asked for a shared spree because it was cheaper. Kurt goes to get Jesse, and when he arrives, she gets in the back seat and the 3 of them continue with the trip. Moments later, Mario tries to hit on her and quickly realizes that she is Jesse Adams, a famous comedian with a large following on the interwebs. Kurt is surprised and asks her to give him some advice, but at that moment Mario interrupts her and starts recording an Instagram story without her permission. Angry, Jesse records a story as well in which she publicly scolds him and Kurt takes the opportunity to advertise his live broadcast. Tired of the situation, the woman gets out of the car and takes a water. Kurt tries to stop her, but luckily the woman throws the water at Mario and throws the bottle against the car. The two continue with the trip and Mario tells her that he is feeling sick, so Kurt stops the car and tells him to get out and throw up outside. The young man gets out, and Kurt takes the opportunity to put the car in reverse and run him over. Mario flies over the windshield, and when he falls to the ground, Kurt continues driving, running him over again. At night, the young man checks Jesse's postings and turns on the car's lights to continue with the lesson. Arriving at a gas station, the young man fuels up and talks to Bobby, his only viewer, who is a famous influencer friend of Kurt. Bobby tells him that his content is garbage and that the murders are fake, and says he will help him get viewers if he does even crazier things. Kurt agrees and on his next trip he stops by to pick up a group of young tourists. The boys tell him they want a different experience, so Kurt takes them to a dumpster and tells them to stick their heads out the roof window. The youngsters do so and Kurt closes the window tightly, leaving them trapped. Moments later, some dogs run at the boys, eating them alive, and Kurt takes care of the other girl by putting a drill through her head. Kurt calls Bobby very excited to tell him what happened, but the young man tells him it doesn't matter since no one saw it, and suggests he look at the profiles of famous people like Jesse to learn how it's done. Kurt looks at the postings, but he thinks it's very unfair that the woman has so many views and he doesn't, despite everything he's doing. Kurt then decides to visit his famous friend Bobby, who was also Liv. When the young man opens the door, Kurt tells him to help him get more views, but his friend comments that he wants no part of what he is doing. So Kurt pulls out a knife and stabs Bobby, while hundreds of people watch. Kurt's broadcast starts to fill up, and Bobby grabs a revolver and points it at Kurt, but the two struggle and the guy manages to wrestle the gun away from him and shoot him in the head. Kurt takes a shower at Bobby's house, and is very happy because there are now hundreds of people watching him. After the shower, Kurt gets dressed in Bobby's clothes and receives a message from his father, asking him to pick him up because he needs to go to a club where the famous DJ One will be. Kurt doesn't know who it is, but his fans ask him to go, so Kurt passes by his father and together they head to the club. Upon arrival, Kurt tries to talk to One and get her to mention him in a story, but the woman ignores him, so Kurt decides to leave to continue with the lesson. Before leaving, one approaches the car and tells him that he'll mention him in a story if he'll take her to the best taco truck and take pictures of her. Kurt agrees, and after the photo shoot the young man offers to buy some food. While Kurt waits in line, the woman finds the gun in the car and takes some pictures, then grabs one of the bottles and drinks some water. The woman starts coughing until she becomes unconscious, and when Kurt gets into the car, 2 police officers observe the strange situation and ask the boy to get out. The officers check him and give him a breathalyzer test, and at that moment, one gets up very confused, and in a state of panic grabs the gun with which he shoots one of the officers in the head, and then runs away. Kurt gets into the car and tries to escape from the police on the highway, while driving in the opposite direction and with his phone in his hand. The young man manages to lose them when he enters an area where homeless people live, and as he feels unstoppable he begins to crash into the tents of the subjects, until he loses control and overturns his car. After a while, we see Jesse Adams on a stage giving his comedy show, and we learn that Kurt is also in the place. At this point Kurt already has a lot of followers and visits, but nothing is enough and the lesson must continue, so the young man decides to kill her, but the woman tells her audience about the situation she had with Kurt and Mario when she asked for a spree, so she breaks her cell phone announcing that she will leave the social networks and will stay away from fame for a while, ending her show. Jesse's speech left Kurt quite thoughtful, and the boy leaves the place. Soon after, Spree's CEO announces that all trips are cancelled in Los Angeles due to the incidents that happened in the last hours. Then, Kurt asks for a go-go, which is the company that competes with Spree, and a man picks him up. At that moment Jesse also asks for a go-go to go home, and when she gets into the car, it is Kurt who is giving her a ride. At first the woman doesn't notice, but then the young man mentions something about the water bottles, so the woman looks him in the face and realizes it's Kurt. Jesse suspects that something weird is going on, but tries to follow the conversation, until at one point everything gets really weird and Kurt asks her to record a sex tape. The boy explains to her that that way they would both have many more followers, but Jesse chokes Kurt with a charger cable. The young man lets go and beats her, knocking her unconscious, and drives to his mother's house. Upon arrival, Kurt gets Jesse out of the car, and quickly gets back in to poll his followers on what he should do with her. The audience votes that he should kill her, but when he looks up the woman is gone. Kurt goes out to investigate, at which point the woman gets in the car and tries to run him over. The young man runs up to the house, and Jesse loses control, crashing through one of the walls. The woman gets out of the car and Kurt's father appears saying that he made a serious mistake in entering his property like that. The girl tries to explain the situation to him, and at that moment Kurt's father sees his mother lying dead on the ground. The man thinks it was her who killed her, but at that moment Kurt appears with a gun in his hand and shoots his father in the back. It is here that we learn that earlier in the day, the first person Kurt killed was his own mother. Jesse crawls to the car while Kurt finishes off his dad with the gun, and when he gets in the car the woman starts the car and rams the boy, smashing him against the wall. Thousands of people watch the whole sequence through the live broadcast, who ask Jesse to go check on Kurt. As he approaches, the guy gets up, but the woman hits him with her phone until he is completely dead. This situation made Jesse become an icon in the United States, where everyone knows her as the woman who managed to defeat the murderer of Spree. Jesse became world famous, and now is one of the main fighters for women's rights and against the wage gap, while on the other hand, several internet forums make tribute and jokes using Kurt to make all kinds of memes, while wondering when the next Kurt will appear. Subscribe and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. Leave a like to help the channel out, and thank you for watching.